Could you speak to the role of feedback, giving, accepting feedback, and how the how of that can influence that watering process in some
Yeah,
just ways?
yeah.
How does this relate to giving and receiving feedback from supervisors? Maybe even to the extent that supervisors are their relationship with feedback and exploring some of those things.
Yeah. So one of the tangible takeaways from the garden metaphor or analogy is the importance of engaging in ongoing self-exploration and education, so that it could be simply just educating yourself around identity and oppression. It could be educating yourself about trauma or supervision. But the other way we learn is through feedback. And 360 feedback or multi-directional feedback is still not a super common practice in education in my experience, but is so invaluable for how we as supervisors can learn more about ourselves. So for folks who are unfamiliar with that, often in education, feedback is given kind of one directionally, where if I'm a supervisor, then once a year or maybe twice a year, I need to give feedback to my supervisee. And it's usually tied to a performance review, and it's very one directional
Mm.
and limited because I only have one perspective on my supervisee. So 360 feedback means the practice of getting feedback from all directions. So I'm getting feedback from my own team or from my stakeholders or from my colleagues, as well as from my boss, and getting learnings from that. So that was a practice that wasn't common the last institution where I worked. So my team and I put together our own twice a year 360 feedback process that we used amongst ourselves as professional staff, as well as amongst our student staff and our graduate staff, and got into kind of an ongoing practice of sharing feedback with one another and admitting really openly how we're learning from that and what we're doing to shift. So I remember one of my first learnings from that process was I worked in an office where it was quite common for us to have evening or weekend commitments, which is not atypical in higher education. And so my staff was often working late nights or on the weekends. And so I would all the time say to them, "Oh, hey, make sure if you worked late, make sure you come in late the next day, or I saw you worked over the weekend, pick a day in the next couple weeks to make sure you take off." So I would say that all the time, but I was not good at doing that myself.
Mm.
And what I heard through the 360 feedback process was that spoke a lot louder than what I was saying to my
Yeah.
staff, right? There was this implicit assumption that, like, oh, if that's what she does, that's what I have to do, or that's what she expects of me, which was not true at all. But it showed me how important it is to value sustainable workplace practices, because it's not good for anyone to be working late nights and weekends and then coming in, right? Or be working these 60, 70 out of hour weeks. And so that was a big shift for me. And hearing that in my 360 feedback to really remember that I need to be modeling and doing some of these things that I'm telling my staff are so important. Um, I think that the one thing that can be a challenge with 360 feedback, and this is just sort of a tension because I think it's such a valuable tool, but it's a tension we have to hold, is that feedback is never identity neutral, right? Feedback is always laden with
Mm.
the ways we internalize oppressive assumptions about others. And I have colleagues who are Black women in particular who have gone through 360 feedback processes and get feedback that's really clouded by racist and sexist assumptions. And so I think for organizations or individuals who want to put 360 feedback processes into place, it's really important that those are put in place in parallel with other kinds of anti-oppressive work. Yeah, feedback is a gift and a wonderful tool, but we can't pretend that it's also not laden with all of these assumptions. It's important that all of us are doing our own work around unpacking those assumptions and unpacking the stereotypes and oppressive ideas that we internalize before we're then putting them out into
Mm.
feedback to others. So that's my one caveat with 360 feedback, but it's such a valuable tool.